Hi guys, how you doing this morning? The response that I got yesterday was incredible, and I think I have to speed up the process of trying to get my story out a little bit. Yesterday we left off where I actually shared with you guys that earlier I was diagnosed with rheumatic fever in the hospital at a young age, probably about 7 years old, and I spent quite a little bit of time there. I spent almost a year in the hospital, and there's some strange things, not strange, but different things that happened to me in the hospital. Being in the hospital that long, you're separated from your family, and you don't get to see them as often as you want to see them. And it's kind of tough when you only see your mom and your dad, and your aunts and your uncles, to visit you in the hospital. So it was kind of lonely, my family didn't have the finances to go back and forth, and we didn't have cars, so it was tough. And so being in there, you learn to adapt. And the only family that I had was doctors, nurses, and more so the other kids that were in my wing. They had the kids separated. We were all in a wing, and you know, during that period of time, you get to play, you get to know the halls, you get to know what room kids are in, and you become friends. And in that process, you really get to adapt to your surroundings and adapt to people who are there. And I adapted to all my friends. And strange thing when I adapted to my friends, the fact that one thing I look back on now is that, I didn't see any color. I just knew kids as kids, and at that point, I had no idea, the different things that go on so far as, different races, different colors, and different things like that. It was just that I knew the kids, and we played together, and I was there an awful long time. I was there probably close to a year, but that was my family, and I think it impacted my life to understand that. I had joy in playing with them kids, no matter who they are or what they were, and we had fun, and we enjoyed each other. We knew each other. We talked. We knew each other's situation. The fact that we didn't know what they were diagnosed with or anything like that, but we knew that some were sicker than others, and we would all go to that kid's room and enjoy him. And so we just ran around the hospital, and it was very impactful in my life because now, when you talk about children's health, I'm deeply sensitive to that right now. I'm deeply sensitive to that right now. We just enjoyed each other. We basically just enjoyed each other, and being there that long was really tough. The tough part was that some kids were sicker than others, and it's tough one night when you go to bed, you remember a kid, and the next morning that kid is not there. And as a child, you don't know what happened. You would hope the worst thing wouldn't happen, but sometimes it did. Or you would say, I hope that he's went home. So that was a tough part of growing up, not being able to do things and not being able to communicate with anyone outside of the hospital for probably about a year. Why they, worked on getting me better. I was one of the early kids that actually was tested with certain drugs, and thank God they worked, and I was able to survive. But the survival rate at that time in that period wasn't very good. So again, I'm a product of a blessing, which not many people know. I am a blessing, but I got through that. Was able to go home and see my family. Then I was confined to the porch because when you get home, they tell you your activity has to be limited. So I really could only see kids play. I was allowed to go out in the front yard a little bit, but basically it was confined to the porch. Basically not really doing anything too, extensive so far as exercise. So that world also was tough because now I didn't have my friends. All the other kids could play, and I didn't have friends. And here's the Lord again working with me is that I would sneak off the porch every now and then and start trying to play with the kids, and then my uncle would come out and I'd get back on the porch real quick, and do that thing. But it was tough. It was very tough. And as I got older, as kids do, I would venture out, and there was a playground down the street. I don't know if anybody knows K-Town, but I grew up in K-Town, and the school next to me was Bryant, Bryant School, and I would sneak out the back door and go over to Bryant Playground. It was probably about, 6 garages. You kind of measured it by garages rather than by blocks. I got 6 garages to get to the playground, and I would go to the playground and sneak in, and I would watch guys play ball because I was afraid to get out there and play because I was this little fat kid that couldn't really do anything. But I would watch guys play, and that was my enjoyment. Just to be able to go from my back porch and go to the playground was a huge achievement for me to be able to do that. It was fun, but in my mind it was always tough because I didn't know if I'd ever be able to play with the guys on the court, and that went on for a long time, being restrained to doing certain things. I just couldn't do them, and then I took it upon my own because my mom worked, and she was a single parent family. We were a single parent family, and so when she worked, I would go out and try to do that thing and try to play basketball a little bit, and I was no good. I was no good at all. I was just that guy sitting on the side. Hey, you come in and we're going to make you the 5th guy because we need one. I was the need one guy. But I actually got to play. I actually got to get on the court and play. But I had to get back because I knew my mom was coming home. And then I was, groomed by all the guys in the neighborhood. I probably could name 100 of them, but I was groomed by the guys in the neighborhood that, you need to come play with us. So I got out on the court. I did what I could do, and I played as much as I could play and had fun with it. And then one summer, the rheumatic fever has a reaction. Basically, I had a reaction, and I got really, really sick, and actually lost quite a few pounds. But then here comes maybe a blessing too. Out of those pounds and getting sick, I grew. I don't know, about 4 or 5 inches, and it was probably right before I get ready to go to West Garfield Upper Grade Center. I don't know if anybody remember that. It was on Madison, and Costner it was, I think it was. And I went and tried out for the team. At 7th grade, nobody's really any good, but I tried out for the team, and that was a big thing, try out for the team. But I did it undercover. I falsified my health documents and signed them, and where all the signatures supposed to be, I just scribbled something in, and I was able to try out. I made the team, but I was a little fat kid. I never played. I didn't play that much, but just to make the team was a big thing. Around the neighborhood, you had your jersey, you walked around, you did that kind of thing. So it was a big thing to me to actually make the team, and you got kind of a boost in the community for making a team. It was fun, but it was frustrating because I wasn't any good. I just wasn't any good, and wasn't playing well, didn't know how to play, really didn't know how to do anything. And then after that, came the idea of my cousin, Ricky Scott. People may not remember him, but he is the one that was involved in my breakthrough. Once he knew I was sneaking out and that I was playing ball, he knew it, and then he would start coming get me late at night, and we would actually kind of rob light from this garage that was right by the playground, and we would set up a light by the rim, and we could play late at night. And he was playing with Providence St. Mel, and he would get me out there at night and beat the crap out of me every night and just wear me out. And he was using me as a guinea pig, I think, trying his stuff. But that was the first point I said, you know what? I really like this. So I spent my time really, really trying to play, really doing everything to play, and he taught me quite a bit. And later I started, getting decent with it. And then came the time after that, trying to fast forward, trying not to bore you guys, but after that, I was allowed to play after the sun went down. And you guys know in the playground, the young kids get to play in the morning. And when the sun's up and it's 1,000 degrees out there, but the big kids come in after the sun goes down off the court where they really can play. And I was allowed to play with the big boys. And when I played with the big boys, the most defining moment came when I was actually threw the ball up court, and there's a gentleman, he was the big guy in the class, and it's kind of deja vu. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just went to the basket, and that was the first dunk of my life, is when I dunked on him. And when you dunk on the guy that's the so-called big guy, you're kind of a hot shot, and it goes through the neighborhood, So that was the beginning of me really thinking that I could play, After I did that, people started looking and say, you should really pay attention and start to play, and I did. After I left West Garfield Upgrade Center, my first trip to really organized basketball came at Austin High School. Actually, I went to Austin and tried out for the team, and there was a zillion guys trying out for the team at Austin. I was still fat, dumpy kid. And I tried out for the team, and actually early, not late, early got cut. I don't know why, but I got cut early. And I think I posted this in Sports Illustrated or a couple of things way back when I was a college player that I went back, and I went back as my cousin, Ricky Scott. And I had a better showing, and I played pretty well, and I actually made the, I don't think it was freshman team at that, I can't remember. I know it was freshman, Fossoff, and then there was the varsity, but I made one of the teams, and got on, made it, and played that year. Some of you guys in Chicago know the story. I played that year. I played, I think, 4 games on the freshman or Fossoff team, and I was moved up after the 4th game. And then to make a long story short, by the end of the freshman year, I was on varsity. And when I came back the following year, I came back. There was a lot of guys on the team, and I played hard. Oh, let me back up a little bit. There's something I really want to tell you, really important here, is that there's a gentleman named George Marshall, and I want to give him credit. There's a gentleman that played before me named George Marshall. I really love this game, and I kind of emulated the things that I did after his game. I really don't want to forget this guy because this is important. And you always have your heroes, and I love George Marshall's game. And George Marshall wore a wristband up around this part of his arm. And I think a lot of you guys may have seen me at high school. I think I was probably the only player in the world wearing a band that high. I was wearing it because George Marshall wore it up there. And I wore it up around the top of my arm here. And I want to make sure I let everybody know that wasn't my original idea. I got it from George Marshall. I don't know where he got it from. And I wore that band up. And then I played with him on varsity. And that was the making of my game because I emulated what he did. I watched how he played. And that was the start of me actually defining my game and the way I played. And he was a very good player, but I want to give him credit for the wristband. I think you see Jordan or a few people actually started doing that later, but George Marshall was the first, and then I took it on to Westinghouse, and then on to DePaul. But after the first year, I really want to get into this because as I was a kid and in the hospital, race wasn't an issue to me. It just wasn't an issue to me. I know that we had, there was serious things going on, so far as conflicts between race. But when I was brought up, I didn't look at it like that. I look at people as people. I didn't look at it, but I knew it existed. But I look at people as people. So when I was a freshman going into my sophomore year, a lot of the people who were running Austin High School, basketball was the thing, and they looked at me and they say, "Oh, we got something here. This kid might be pretty good." And at that point, we had a gentleman that was on my sophomore team who was a great coach. His name was Felix Brown. Coach Brown has passed. And then we had a varsity coach named Gary Peckler. I didn't see race, and maybe it's a fault of mine, but I'm just telling you the honest truth. I didn't see race. I just looked at people as people. And Gary Peckler had spent his own money buying food, doing things that the school couldn't do for us. And then we had an African-American principal come in. And again, they fired this gentleman, Gary Peckler, and moved him out and put Felix Brown as the head coach for the varsity team. And at that point, politically, I'm not a politician, and I maybe, it's a fault of mine. I just know people as people, and I thought that was wrong, but, as a basketball player, I couldn't do anything about it. But the determining factor is that my mom came up to the school, and she found out that I had missed 127 days of class, which I was, did. Just wasn't going to class, but I was allowed to play basketball. And when she saw that, it was over. That was over. She was like, "You guys got my kid playing basketball, and you allowed him to miss 127 days of class." I think that's the number. I might be wrong, but as you know, moms, she went nuts. And she no longer felt confidence in the Austin High School. And she said, "You're out of here. You're leaving. You're transferring. That's out." And a lot of people thought it was race-related, but it wasn't. It was all educational-related. And at that point is when I transferred to Westinghouse High School. I moved to Westinghouse as a sophomore or junior, don't know which one. Sophomore, I think it was. We had just played them previously in the playoffs, and on the west side, it's kind of gladiator-like. It's like, who's the best? And I had adapted to the fact that, I want to know who the best is. So there was a gentleman at Westinghouse. His name was Eddie Johnson. Could play. Jeez, could play. Eddie, if you get this, hats off to you, buddy. Eddie could play. And but we played a playoff game, Austin against Westinghouse, and Eddie was an All-American. I mean, geez, Eddie had scouts from all over America coming to see him play, and I was like, well, hold on, why can't I get anybody to see me play? I think I'm as good as Eddie. So when we had that playoff game, I think Eddie, not trying to boast, but you remember, I think I gave y'all about 50. And at that point, I knew I was capable of playing. And that happened before the transfer. So then Eddie and I got to be friends, and I transferred from Austin to Westinghouse, and that's when the Westinghouse era started. The fact that I was playing with Eddie Johnson, and I started to make my mark as a basketball player. I don't want to bore you guys, but I'm trying to condense this story so you know a little bit about how it happened and where I went. And I'm going to get into the Westinghouse thing. I'm going to try to get through this. I'm going to get to the Westinghouse thing probably tomorrow. But when I got to Westinghouse, things exploded. They really, really exploded. And at that point, I kind of knew that, you know what, kid, you might be all right. You might be all right. I want to change gears a little bit to you guys that are watching the Warriors and the Cavaliers play. First, I'd like to say that, there's a difference in my era and their era, because when you're a championship team, the most championship teams during my era, you had some fights like the Bostons and the Lakers and the things like that, but the game doesn't start till game 3. And as you all know, to go down 3-0 is like almost a death sentence. But when I look at the Cavaliers Cleveland game, what I see is that there's one quarter that is the difference in this series right now. That came on the second game when Steph Curry got hot, and that separated game 2. Game 1 was separated by the offensive foul, whichever way you feel it's supposed to went. With that offensive foul, that determined that game. So these teams are a lot closer than you would think going into game 3. So game 3 will kind of make the stance. And if Cleveland goes back 2-2, I think they already understand is that they were in a position to win a game 1. So that means a lot. And believe me, the coaches are thinking about that. So I will get into Westinghouse probably tomorrow, and we'll talk about Westinghouse a little bit. Again, I'm speeding it up, but I just want you guys to know what went on, and the recruiting phase that happened in Westinghouse was the most incredible thing that I've ever been through. So I'm a West Side kid. Thank you, guys. See you tomorrow.